On the quiet street of Willow Street, what was meant to be the happiest day of her life turned into a night Clara Jennings would never forget. Amid the laughter of her own family, the cake bearing her name was shoved to the ground, and with it, a heart that had been trampled for years finally shattered. They thought they had humiliated her. But what they didn't know was that very night, they had awakened a woman who would never be afraid again. The last light of day spilled over the porch of No. 12 Willow Street, golden and gentle, just like any other evening in the small town of Maple Falls, Oregon. In the backyard, a long wooden table was draped with a white cloth. Strings of tiny lights hung above like sleepy stars about to wake. It was the start of a graduation party for Clara Jennings, the educated daughter of the Jennings family. The smell of grilled meat, mixed with the twang of old country music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses floating in the air. Someone called out with a teasing laugh, "Clara, you finally decided to come back to us, huh?" She smiled softly, her voice calm as a breath. "Just for a few days. I've got an interview in Portland next week." Her mother, Marian, sat at the head of the table, the faded floral dress on her looking like a memory, a glass of white wine tilting in her hand. "An interview already? So soon? You just graduated. Can't you stay with your mother a little longer?" Her tone hovered between a joke and a reproach, the kind that made everyone else chuckle. "I've been in Portland for years, Mom," Clara replied. "Yes, but back then you were just a student. Now you're—" Marian's lips curled into a thin smile. "Now you're a real city woman." Her words were sweet, so sweet they stung. Her sister Vanessa giggled. "Careful! Mom's in one of her moods." Next thing you know, she'll say you've forgotten where you came from. "Oh, please. She never had much of a where she came from to forget," Vanessa added, pouring her mother another drink, her eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. Clara smiled faintly, swallowing the tightness in her throat. The party went on loud, messy, filled with laughter that didn't quite reach her. Her father, Greg, sat at the far end of the table, eyes fixed on his beer, pretending not to hear a thing. When the sun slipped below the trees, Clara brought out the cake, frosted white with pale blue letters that read, "Congratulations, Clara." She smiled and placed it at the center of the table. "Here it is from Sweet Haven Bakery. They said the vanilla scent makes everyone happier." Her 10-year-old nephew Eli darted around the yard, his laughter bright and free. Clara bent down, gentle as always. "Eli, want to help me blow out the candles?" The boy looked up at her, those same blue eyes as Vanessa's, sparkling with mischief. "Mom says cake is for people who actually did something important," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The air went still. A thin, fragile silence, then laughter burst out, first from Marian, then from the whole table. "Eli, you're too honest, sweetheart," Marian said between peals of laughter, her voice sharp and high, cutting through the evening like glass. Vanessa shrugged. "He's just a kid, Clara. Don't take it so seriously. He's only saying what he hears." Clara stood there, fingers tightening around the silver cake knife. She forced a smile. "It's fine. Let's just eat. The cake's really good." Greg tried to mend the tension, his voice weak and hesitant. "Why don't we let Eli have the first slice?" But Eli was already at the table, his small hands pressing against the edge. "Eli," she started, but before she could finish, he shoved. The table shook. The cake slid off the tray, falling in slow motion, then hit the patio stones with a wet, heavy splat. White frosting splattered across her shoes. "Eat it off the ground, Aunt Clara!" Eli's voice rang out, innocent and cruel all at once. Laughter exploded. Vanessa covered her mouth with her wine glass. Marian threw her head back, tears of laughter in her eyes. "Oh, come on, Clara," Marian said, her tone long and lazy, bored more than sorry. "It's just a cake. Don't be so dramatic, honey." Clara stared down at the wreck, the once bright "Congratulations" now a smudged blue streak on the concrete. For a moment, every sound disappeared. All she could hear was her heartbeat and the sickly sweet scent of vanilla mixed with damp earth. Eli turned to his mother, whispering, "Did I do good, Mom?" Vanessa leaned down, her voice low but sharp, and Clara still heard it. "Perfect, sweetheart. Just perfect." Clara set the knife down on the table, carefully, like she was afraid of breaking something fragile. Her hands trembled, not from anger, but from emptiness, a hollow that spread through her chest, cold and vast, as if someone had quietly drained the life out of her. She untied the pale blue apron her mother had made her wear, folded it neatly, and placed it on the chair. "I'm heading out," she said calmly, her voice too steady for the moment. "Where to?" Marian asked, the question casual, almost indifferent. "Home." Laughter erupted again from behind her. Someone called out, "The graduate is leaving the party!" Clara didn't turn around. She walked across the yard, past the glowing string lights, past the echo of forced laughter that made everything look normal even when it wasn't. Her car was parked by the curb beneath an old maple tree. When the door closed, the laughter from the backyard faded, distant, like it belonged to another world. She sat still, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the frosting on her shoes. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from a quiet realization. Some families don't need anyone to betray them. They do it themselves, with laughter, with silence, and with words that sound harmless until they cut too deep. The headlights came on, casting silver light on the moonlit road. Clara drove off, not knowing exactly where she was headed, only that behind her was a house once called home, and ahead of her lay freedom. Lonely, but hers at last. The I-84 stretched out before her like an endless ribbon of gray, winding between the mist-covered hills of Oregon. The headlights flickered across the windshield and disappeared into the dark like memories Clara Jennings was trying to outrun. The wind howled outside, but inside the car there was only the steady hum of the engine and her own, even breathing the only sound keeping her from sinking into the chaos inside her chest. In her mind, every moment from the party on Willow Street kept replaying like an old film reel. Her mother's curling smile, Vanessa's triumphant gaze, the sharp laughter of family friends, all of it merged into a shrill chorus that drowned out the sound of the tires on the road. "Eat it off the ground, Aunt Clara." The line was so light, yet it cut like a blade. She thought of her childhood, the little wooden house on the edge of Maple Falls, where her mother's laughter was always loudest when it was at someone's expense, and usually that someone was her. "You're too sensitive, Clara," her mother used to say whenever she cried after Vanessa's teasing. "People who make it in life are the ones who learn to swallow their tears." Vanessa would shrug and smile. "Mom's right, Clara. You've got to learn to lighten up. Don't bring the mood down for everyone." And then the two of them would laugh, leaving her there small, raw, bleeding from words that never sounded cruel enough to hurt, but always did. The car passed a sign, "Welcome to Portland." The city at night shimmered quietly, towers glinting like 1,000 windows awake in the dark. Clara pulled over beneath the red brick building where she rented a small apartment in the Hawthorne district. The air carried the damp scent of the Willamette River, cold but comforting. She grabbed her bag, walked through the empty hallway, her heels tapping softly against the floor. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing in the silence. The apartment held only a gray sofa, a small wooden table, and a potted philodendron by the window. Sparse, but hers. No one laughed here. No one ordered her around. She switched on the light and sank into the sofa, staring at her hands, the faint crust of dried white frosting clinging to her nails. The smell of vanilla still lingered, sweet and suffocating. Her phone buzzed softly. The screen lit up in the dark. A new message from Clara Jennings, her mother. Just 7 words, short and cold. "We've decided to cut all contact. Stay away for good." Beneath it, a small red heart appeared. Vanessa. Clara stared at the message for a long time, reading it like a verdict. No emotion, no sorrow, just a cold, hollow space spreading through her chest. She set the phone down and leaned her head back against the chair. A dry, brittle laugh escaped her, weak and almost like a sob. "Cut all contact?" she murmured, a trace of irony in her voice. "You don't have anything left to cut." She closed her eyes and let the memories flood back all the times she'd been scolded for not being grateful. The nights she lay awake hearing her mother and Vanessa whisper in the kitchen about her. "She always acts like she's the one who suffers the most." Yeah, she thinks she's better than us now, with all that education. She had once believed that if she worked harder, achieved more, they would love her. She graduated with honors, started working early, sent money home, but to them, her success was an insult proof of how small they felt. The phone lit up again, a notification from the family group chat. Family of 4. Clara had always been the quiet one there. The last message was her mother's the same cruel line followed by Vanessa's red heart. No reply from Greg, her father. He was still the man of silence, as always whenever something ugly happened in their house. Clara opened a cabinet, poured herself the last of the white wine in the bottle. The sting burned her throat, but it calmed her chest. She stepped out onto the balcony. Portland glistened below in a thin drizzle, streetlights smeared into 1,000 tiny reflections on the wet asphalt. A bus rumbled in the distance. Somewhere, someone laughed in a cafe at the end of the block. Life went on. Only one thing had ended. She thought about the message again, stay away for good. They thought they were punishing her, that she would be afraid, beg for forgiveness, come crawling back for reconciliation. But what they didn't realize was that they had just broken her chains. They had grown too used to Clara being the reliable one, the one who paid the bills when her father lost his job, who sent money to fix the roof, who bought gifts for her nephew's birthday. She had never asked for anything in return. And now, when they told her to stay away forever, they forgot one thing. Everything they had was built partly on her back. In the stillness, Clara felt something shift inside her. The humiliation slowly gave way to something else, clear, cold, and solid as steel. "Stay away?" she whispered, a faint smile touching her lips. "Fine. Let's see who really needs whom." The wall clock ticked softly, each second matching the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She set down the glass and opened her laptop. The bluish light reflected off her face, steady and composed. Scattered across the table were bills, contracts, bank papers, the ones her mother had once called, "Just sign them. Honey, you're just helping the family." Clara opened each file, her name printed neatly beside the line marked co-signer. For years, she had thought it was her duty as the good daughter. Now, she had nothing left to lose. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. The drops hit the railing with a rhythmic tap, the quiet pulse of a decision taking form. She picked up her phone again. The familiar names appeared on the screen. Mom, Dad, Vanessa. 3 names, 3 people, 3 wounds. Clara didn't type a single word. She just stared at the glowing screen. At that little red heart, a tiny symbol carrying a lifetime of condescension, manipulation, and pretend affection. Then she locked the screen, turned the phone face down on the table, switched off the light, and stepped into the dark. Only the rain remained, and in that sound, a faint smile formed on her lips. The kind of smile that comes when you finally understand that silence can be the loudest answer of all. Somewhere deep inside, a thought flickered to life, a thought about freedom, about living without fear that someone might withdraw their love like collecting a debt. That message, meant to be an ending, was in truth something else entirely. It was the beginning. Morning in Portland was sluggish and damp, as if the mist itself refused to leave the city. In her 3rd-floor apartment on Belmont Street, Clara Jennings sat at a small wooden table, the dim glow of her laptop screen reflecting softly across her face. Beside her was a cup of coffee gone cold, a pale swirl of milk spreading slowly across its surface. Patient, unhurried, much like Clara herself had been all these years, circling quietly inside the orbit of responsibility, too afraid to break free. On the screen glimmered her personal expense sheet, a familiar grid of numbers she updated every month. At the end of the table, 2 particular lines made her pause. Mortgage, Willow Street house, $450 month. Vanessa's SUV payment, $620 month. Together, over $1,000 every month, nearly 5 years. She leaned back, eyes half closed. A voice echoed in her head, her mother's, sweet and cold. "You're the only stable one, Clara. We just need your help for a little while." That little while had stretched into half a decade. She remembered that autumn afternoon in 2020 Oregon, rain drizzling endlessly, her phone buzzing while she was working overtime at Green Pulse Technologies, the company that had just hired her as a project manager. "Clara, sweetheart," her mother's trembling voice came through, laced with tears. "Your father lost his job at the plant. They're threatening to foreclose on the house. Just sign this co-loan form, will you? Only for a few months, honey." And from behind her mother, Vanessa's voice chimed in. "Clara, if Mom loses the house, where do you expect her to live? Your cramped little Portland apartment?" She signed, without hesitation, because that's what good daughters did, the ones who were stable. Now the number $35,000 danced across the screen, bare and shameless, the truth finally exposed. $35,000. For a house she was never truly welcome in. For a car belonging to the sister who once taught her son to humiliate her in front of the entire family. She scrolled through each cell of the spreadsheet, each click slicing open another year of quiet endurance. $450 for Mom's roof, $620 for Vanessa's wheels, and how much for my dignity? Her lips curved into a bitter half-smile that trembled somewhere between laughter and a sigh. A notification pinged. The family of 4, group chat, new messages. "Vanessa, Mom says the roof's leaking again. Dad picked the cheap shingles, so now it's falling apart. We'll figure it out. Clara, honey, maybe your bonus this year can help a bit, just till we get back on track." Clara read the messages twice, calm, almost detached. Outside, the rain tapped steadily against the window, each drop a quiet insistence. She opened her banking app and stared at the list of automatic deductions, neat, punctual, without fail. Every line read auto payment successful, each one a slap she had learned to absorb. Then her eyes stopped on an email thread from Crescent Financial, the bank managing the loans. She clicked compose, and the pale blue light glowed in her tired eyes. Subject: Financial accounts. Immediate action required. 2. Marion Jennings, Greg Jennings, Vanessa Cole. Her fingers hovered for a moment, trembling, as they always did when facing them, but not this time. This time, it felt different. Like she wasn't writing an explanation, but a declaration. "Removing my name from every loan tomorrow." 6 words, heavier than any apology she had ever given. Clara stared at the sentence as the cursor blinked beside it. No anger, no theatrics. Just truth, cold and clear, like the surface of an Oregon lake under the rain. She took a slow breath, then pressed send. The faint whoosh of the email leaving her outbox made the room suddenly still. Then came the sound of rain again, steady and soft, as if it were applauding her. 1 minute, then 2. Nothing, no messages, no calls. Just that eerie quiet, the kind that always comes before a storm. Clara stood and walked to the window. Below, a few people hurried along the narrow street, their umbrellas glinting under the neon sign of the Hawthorne Deli. An elderly couple strolled their dog, fingers intertwined. The simple tenderness of the scene tightened her throat. She realized she had never once seen her parents hold hands. Her phone vibrated. "Mom, what do you mean by that email, Clara? You can't just decide something like this without talking to us." Another message appeared before she could respond. "Vanessa, is this a joke? You punishing us for the party? Grow up." Then came the video call. Her mother's face filled the screen, hair messy, lipstick smudged, eyes sharp. "Clara Jennings, I'm asking you, what do you mean by this?" Clara looked straight into the camera, her voice steady and cool. "I'm just doing what you told me to do, remember? Cut all contact." On the other end, Vanessa snorted with laughter. "Oh, please, Clara, don't be so dramatic. We know you won't actually do it. You can't." "Watch me," Clara said, and ended the call. In that moment, she felt something slip loose inside her, a chain unfastening. A velvet-covered chain, soft and warm, but a chain nonetheless. She reopened her spreadsheet. The familiar numbers stared back. One click. Delete row Willow Street mortgage. Another click. Delete row Vanessa's SUV. The screen was empty, but to her, it had never looked more full. The light from the street spilled across the window, washing half her face in a pale golden hue. She picked up her phone, opened the Notes app, and typed quickly, "Note to self, freedom costs less than obligation." Outside, a car horn echoed in the distance, blending with the rhythm of the rain. Clara closed her eyes, resting her head against the window frame, letting the cold wind thread through her hair. The anger inside her no longer burned, it glowed, a quiet, steady light, the kind that stays after the fire has done its work, the kind that belongs to someone who is no longer afraid. She knew that by morning they would call, they would yell, accuse, threaten, but their words would reach her only as the sound of rain, relentless, noisy, and fleeting. For the first time in her life, Clara Jennings didn't tremble doing what was right for herself. For the first time, she lifted her head, looked out at the city, and felt free. Truly, finally free. All through the night, Clara's small apartment was filled with the cold blue light of her phone screen. Every few minutes, it lit up again, another missed call, another message, another notification from family of 4. She didn't open them. The phone lay face down on the table, like some restless creature thrashing to drag her back into the world she had just escaped from. When dawn slipped through the curtains, the only sound in the room was the soft tapping of Portland rain against the glass. Clara poured herself a cup of coffee, her eyes hollow, but strangely bright. Beside her laptop sat a neat stack of papers she had gathered the night before, bills, emails, text transcripts, documents that had once made her believe she was the responsible daughter. Now, each page was evidence proof that she had been systematically, skillfully, and emotionally used. She slid them carefully into a large folder, aligning the edges as if preparing for an important meeting. And in a way, it was the most important one of her life, a final meeting with her past. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Mom, 14 missed calls. Vanessa, 9 missed calls. Dad, 4 missed calls. Then came the flood of messages. Mom, Clara, what do you think you're doing? This is your parents' house. Vanessa, are you out of your mind? You want Mom to end up on the street? Dad, honey, call your father. We can talk this through. Mom, we raised you, paid for your education. This is how you repay us? She set her cup down, wiped the bead of condensation from its rim. Not one message contained the word sorry. Only threats, guilt, and the same soft cruelty disguised as love, the language her family had spoken all her life. Clara opened her laptop and clicked into the family documents folder she had once created. Everything was there, bank statements, her mother's emails asking her to co-sign the loans, the text from Vanessa lying, "You're just signing your name. Don't worry, I'll make the payments myself." Each line of text told a story she had once refused to hear, the story of herself, the woman who always said, "It's fine, as long as they need me." The rain thickened outside. Streetlights flickered off, leaving a silver glow over the wet pavement. Clara stood, slipped on her gray wool coat, fastening each button with care. Her black blazer hung on the chair, the one she wore for important meetings at Green Pulse Technologies, where she worked as a project manager. Today, it wasn't for work. It was her armor. She adjusted her collar and stared into the mirror for a long while. The face looking back was thinner, but the eyes, those were different. No worry, no waiting for approval. Just stillness, the kind that rests on the surface of a deep river. Driving through Portland toward Crescent Bank, the sky was the color of pewter. Trees glistened with rain, and headlights shimmered against the wet road like threads of metal. Clara turned on the radio but kept it silent. She didn't need music. Her own heartbeat was enough of a rhythm. When she parked in front of the gleaming stone building of Crescent Bank, she sat still for a moment, breathing deeply. This was the same place her mother had brought her 3 years ago, saying, "I just need you to sign, sweetheart. It's only paperwork, just so your father and I have somewhere to live." Back then, Clara had worn a beige coat, her hands trembling as she signed. Today, she wore black. Her hands still trembled, but not from fear. Stepping through the glass doors, she caught the faint scent of polished wood and fresh coffee. The receptionist looked up with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Clara Jennings. I have an appointment with Mr. Reynolds, head of credit services." She sat on the brown leather chair, listening to the steady rhythm of keyboards, the soft hum of printers, the clink of coffee cups, an ordinary office symphony. For Clara, it was the overture to an earthquake. Her phone lit up again. New messages. "Vanessa, Mom's crying. Hope you're happy." "Mom, if we lose the house, it'll be your fault." "Dad, you know how your mother gets. Call her before this goes too far." Clara smiled a small, tired smile, but with something like release behind it. They still thought she would panic. They still believed she was the daughter who would always save them, but this time, they were wrong. A deep male voice spoke behind her. "Clara Jennings?" She turned. A middle-aged man with silver-rimmed glasses and a kind, formal smile. "Mr. Reynolds. Thank you for seeing me." "Of course. Come on in." The office was wide and bright, decorated with framed Oregon landscapes. He gestured for her to sit, then glanced at the thick folder she placed on his desk. "Looks like you came prepared." "I did," Clara said evenly. "I want to have my name removed from 2 loan agreements. I have proof that the initial signing was done under misleading circumstances." He nodded, eyes serious. "May I take a look?" Clara opened each document, explaining them one by one. Her voice was calm, precise, no shaking, no apology. She told the story not with bitterness, but with the clarity of someone who had finally risen from the water after being held under too long. When she finished, silence settled between them. "Mr. Reynolds leaned back, thoughtful, then said quietly, "Clara, you're not the first person I've seen in a situation like this, but very few have the courage to step out." He rested his hand on the folder. "I'll review this today. If we confirm there was misrepresentation during signing, you can have your name removed." Clara nodded, eyes lowering slightly. His voice was steady, warm, and strangely, it carried the calm reassurance of a father she'd never had. "Thank you," she said softly. "I just want to be free, even if it's only once." He smiled gently. "Freedom, Clara, is the best investment you'll ever make." When she stepped out of the bank, the rain had eased. A patch of pale blue sky broke through the clouds. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the faint warmth of sunlight touch her cheek, the first in days. Her phone buzzed again inside her pocket. She didn't take it out. Her hands were still cold, but her heart wasn't. And in that moment, standing on the rain-slicked streets of Portland, she knew the people in that family group chat would soon panic, far more than she ever had, because, for the first time, the one person they could control was finally out of their reach. Inside the glass-walled office of Crescent Bank, the air carried the scent of oak, a faint trace of coffee, and the low hum of a printer like the steady breath of a gentle beast. Late morning light streamed through the window, glinting off a gold nameplate. Rajesh Patel, branch manager. The man behind the desk had warm brown skin, a calm, grounded voice, and the steady eyes of someone who had seen too many human stories hidden behind numbers. Clara sat across from him, her hands clutching the folder in her lap as if it contained her very heart. She had told him everything, every detail, every wound. Not with tears, but with a voice so calm it was almost cold. She handed Mr. Patel each piece of evidence. Copies of bank statements, emails that said just a signature, honey, and her mother's message promising, "It's only temporary, you won't have to pay for long." Mr. Patel read slowly, his eyes moving line by line. Every so often, he paused and looked up at Clara, a gaze somewhere between disbelief and quiet pity. "How long have you been paying for them?" he asked, evenly. 5 years, Clara replied. $35,000. Not 1 month missed. He nodded slightly, then placed the papers down. "Clara," he said, his voice deliberate, each word measured, "what your family did is called financial coercion. It's not only unethical, it's a legal violation if there's evidence of deception during the signing process." Leaning back, he folded his hands. "You have everything I need. Now, let's fix this." That phrase, "let's fix this," echoed in Clara's mind like a blessing. After years of being treated as the one who must be responsible, someone had finally used the words, "help you." Mr. Patel picked up the phone, his tone firm but calm. "Lena, please bring me a release of liability form and contact legal immediately. Prioritize the Jennings file loan numbers 4,880 and 5,621. A voice answered crisply on the other end. "Yes, Mr. Patel." He turned back to Clara, gentler now. "I'll need your signature on a few documents. Then we'll submit a formal request to remove your name from the 2 loans, one for the house on Willow Street, the other for your sister's SUV. Once processed, all responsibility will revert to the primary borrowers." "And what happens to them?" Clara asked quietly. "Simple," he replied. "They'll either keep up the payments or the assets will be repossessed. But from this moment on, that's no longer your burden." A soft stillness settled over the room. Clara could hear the rain outside, each drop tapping gently against the window pane, rhythmic, soothing. "You can breathe now," Mr. Patel said softly. An assistant entered carrying 2 thick folders and a black rubber stamp marked "Approved" in bold. Mr. Patel reviewed each page carefully, explaining as he went. "This confirms that you're no longer a co-obligor on either loan. On page 3, you'll see that previous payments made under your name are recorded as non-refundable assistance. We'll update the system today." Clara signed. Her first stroke trembled, but the last was steady, as if, in that single motion, she was closing one chapter and opening another. Mr. Patel lifted the stamp and pressed it down hard in the lower corner. Thud. The sound was short but powerful. Thud. A second strike, and Clara felt her throat tighten. That sound, it wasn't just paper. It was the sound of chains breaking, of a locked door swinging open. She took a deep breath. The air felt clearer now, filled with the scent of coffee, wood, and printed paper, the fragrance of freedom. Mr. Patel smiled, his voice warm and paternal. "You know, I see this often, especially with women. They get bound by a kind of family love mixed with guilt and manipulation. You don't have to be ashamed for helping them. But today, you should be proud, because you finally helped yourself." Clara nodded gently. For the first time in years, her eyes welled not from hurt, but from something lighter, soft, clean, and profoundly human. Mr. Patel signed the final page and handed her the file. His voice was firm, resolute. "From this moment on, you're no longer tied to these loans, legally, financially, or morally. You are completely free." She looked down at the embossed seal, the bold words "release of liability confirmed" shining under the light. Something inside her went still peaceful. She couldn't find the words, so she simply smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Patel." He returned the smile. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for being brave enough to walk in here." When Clara stepped out of the building, Portland was still draped in a fine drizzle. Silver threads of rain landed softly on her hair, clinging to her black blazer. She didn't raise her umbrella. She tilted her face to the sky instead. The city hummed as it always did, buses roaring, bicycle bells ringing, voices calling through the mist. But inside her, for the first time, there was peace. On the bank steps, she unlocked her phone. Dozens of new messages flashed across the screen. "Mom, Clara," I heard from the bank. "What did you do?" "Vanessa, they said your name's off the contract. You can't do this to your family." "Dad, honey, your mother's upset. Please, don't make this worse." Clara looked at them for a moment, then locked the screen. A faint smile curved at the corner of her lips, the smile of someone who has finally learned to let go. She stepped onto the sidewalk, breathing in deep. The chill of Portland air filled her lungs, crisp, clean, like her first breath in a new life. Her heels clicked softly against the wet pavement, light, but certain. She no longer hurried. She no longer bowed her head. Amid the crowd rushing past, Clara stood still in the rain, her hand wrapped around the folder stamped "Approved." And through the city's noise, she could hear one quiet voice inside her, low, steady, and proud. "I did it." Rain still fell across Clara's roof, that thin, persistent, familiar kind of Portland rain, as if the sky itself had something to say, but didn't quite know how to begin. Her small apartment glowed faintly blue from her phone screen, where dozens of notifications from family of 4 blinked endlessly. She sat curled up on the sofa, blanket draped loosely around her legs. Beside her, a cup of chamomile tea still steamed, and on the coffee table lay the folder stamped "Approved," perfectly squared, a quiet certificate that she, at last, was free. But her family wasn't ready to accept that. The first message came from her mother. "Mom, Clara, what have you done? The bank just called. You've driven this family insane. You're tearing us apart." Then came Vanessa. "Vanessa, you're seriously sick, Clara. Is this about jealousy over one stupid party?" And, as always, the soft, patching voice of her father trying to mend what couldn't be mended. "Dad, sweetheart, your mother's crying. Please, just call her. We can talk about this." Clara set the phone down, watching the light pulse against the ceiling. 3 messages, 3 tones of voice, but all with the same rhythm. Not one of them asked if she was okay. Not one said sorry. She exhaled slowly, picked up her phone again. Another message had arrived. "Vanessa." Again. "Vanessa, you're a bitter failure, Clara. I've always known you couldn't stand seeing me happy." Clara laughed softly, almost like a breath. The kind of laugh that slips out when you've run out of pain to feel and realize there's nothing left for anyone to take from you. She typed a message, slow and deliberate. "I just stopped paying for people who laughed when my cake hit the floor. No threats, no explanations, just truth stripped bare, calm, terrifyingly simple." She stared at the line for a moment, then hit send. The screen glowed. Delivered. Below it, the 3 little dots appeared. Someone typing. Maybe her mother. Maybe Vanessa. She didn't wait to find out. Clara opened. Settings. Scrolled down. Block contact. 1, 2, 3, one by one. The screen went still. No more buzzing. No more light. The only sound left was the rain tapping against the glass. A strange quiet filled her, not heavy, but weightless, like the hush that comes after a storm has passed. She set the phone down, poured more tea. Warmth spread through her fingers, into her chest. The soft scent of chamomile pulled her back to childhood, to feverish nights when her mother would bring her tea, her voice gentle as she whispered, "Go to sleep, baby girl." Back then, her mother's love had tasted sweet. Now it tasted like conditions, debt, and silence she'd been forced to swallow. Clara closed her eyes. Part of her still wanted to believe that somewhere inside, her mother hadn't meant to be cruel. Maybe she just never learned another way to love. But love couldn't mend wounds carved by the same hands that caused them. Then the doorbell rang. Clara jumped slightly. Who would come at this hour? She peered through the peephole. It was Lucy, her downstairs neighbor, the young woman who worked at Hawthorne Page's, the little bookstore down the block. "Clara, I saw your lights still on. You okay?" "I'm fine," Clara said, opening the door with a small smile. "Just sorting a few things out." Lucy tilted her head, curious. "You always have sad music playing. I figured you were writing something." Clara laughed softly. "No, just trying to rewrite my life." Lucy grinned. "That sounds like a movie. You'll have to tell me the movie version one day." "Maybe I will," Clara said quietly, though her eyes held a faint light. When Lucy left, the apartment sank back into silence. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was the kind of silence that only comes after you've walked through hell and found the courage to stand in the light, unafraid that it might fade. Clara stepped out onto the balcony. Below, the street shimmered with yellow light stretching across wet pavement. A car horn echoed in the distance, mingling with the smell of coffee drifting from Elm and Birch Cafe on the corner. A middle-aged man folded his umbrella, stooping to pick up a newspaper blown by the wind, a small gesture, but one that made her smile. Life outside went on, with or without family of four. She went back inside, opened her laptop. The screen glowed her Excel sheet already tidy clean. No more lines reading Willow Street mortgage or Vanessa's SUV payment. Instead, a new entry appeared. Emergency fund for Clara only. She adjusted the font, bolded it, and saved the file. The phone remained silent, and strangely, it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. No more buzzing. No more, you're tearing this family apart. Only rain and her own steady breathing. She turned on a small lamp. Golden light filled the room. On the table, the bank folder lay beside a blank sheet of paper. Clara picked up her pen and wrote, "Freedom isn't loud. It sounds like silence." She taped the note to the wall beside the window, the spot where the first light of morning would touch it. That night, for the first time in years, Clara went to bed without her phone beside her. She placed it in a drawer, locked it away, burying with it every accusation, every fake cry, every cruel laugh from that long-ago party. Outside, Portland kept raining. But inside her, the storm had passed. She lay down, pulled the blanket up to her shoulders, and closed her eyes, letting the darkness hold her gently. And in her dreams, for the first time, no one called her name with demands. There was only herself standing in the rain, lifting her face to the sky, exhaling a long, quiet breath, free. 3 days later, Portland was raining again, that heavy, lingering rain that seemed like the sky itself couldn't quite bring itself to let go. In her third-floor apartment on Belmont Street, Clara Jennings was cooking a simple dinner, a bowl of butternut squash soup, a few slices of toasted bread, and a soft jazz record humming from the Bluetooth speaker. She had just smiled to herself, amused by the lazy drawl of the singer's voice, when, bang! 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 The spoon slipped from her hand. She froze. The first knocks were sharp, then turned into pounding. Hard, relentless, furious. A familiar voice shrieked from the hallway. "Clara Jennings, open this door right now! It's your mother!" Clara stood motionless. Her heart thudded, loud and quick, as if the pounding on the door and the pounding in her chest were one and the same. Then another voice, higher, sharper, trembling with rage. "Open the door, Clara! You've destroyed this family!" "Do you even know Mom hasn't slept for 3 nights because of you?" Vanessa. Clara moved slowly toward the door. her hand trembling as it touched the knob. Through the door camera, she saw them clearly, two women standing in the downpour, drenched, hair plastered to their faces, expressions hardened by anger. Her mother, Marion, still had that familiar look of control, but under the rain, her makeup had streaked into gray lines. Vanessa looked wild. She slammed her palm against the door, voice cracking. "You think what you did was right? The bank sent foreclosure papers to Mom's house. You're going to kill her, Clara!" Another blow hard enough to shake the wood. Clara backed away. Her body trembled not from fear of them, but from the part of her that still wanted to obey, still wanted to be the good daughter, the one who opened the door and said, "I'm sorry." That part of her had been raised on guilt and fear her entire life. But not tonight. She took a deep breath and picked up her phone. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, professional. "They're my family," Clara said, eyes still locked on the camera feed. "But they're outside my door, pounding and yelling. I don't think they'll leave. Is anyone injured, ma'am?" "No, but they're out of control." She looked again at the screen. Vanessa was shouting at their mother now, her face twisted, almost crying. "I don't know what they might do. They're my mother and sister. But right now, they're strangers." "What's your address?" "Belmont Street, apartment 3B, Maple Ridge Apartments. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and don't open the door." Clara hung up. The room fell silent, except for the rain hammering the windows and her mother's voice echoing through the wood. "I gave birth to you, raised you, and now you're calling the police on your own mother? Clara, have you lost your mind?" Vanessa's voice cut in, raw and shaking. "Stop pretending you're the victim, Clara. You've been playing that sad little role your whole life." That sentence made something twist deep in Clara's chest, because it was too familiar. Vanessa had said it all her life. You just love being the victim. And Clara had believed it for so long she'd forgotten who had written that script for her in the first place. She turned away, walking toward the kitchen, forcing her breath to steady. Her hand brushed the back of a chair, then dropped. Through the rain, the pounding weakened, replaced by muffled sobs and angry murmurs. Then, as if by grace, the distant sound of a siren broke through the noise. Red and blue lights flickered against her window pane. "Portland Police! Step away from the door, please!" The hallway went still. Her mother's voice wavered. "No, wait. You don't understand she's my daughter. This is just a misunderstanding." A low, firm male voice replied. "Ma'am, your daughter reported a disturbance. You need to leave the premises now. If you refuse, we'll have to remove you by force." Vanessa protested, her voice dissolving into the rain and the officer's footsteps. Moments later, there was only the echo of retreating steps, the soft thud of the elevator door closing. Silence. This time, it was real. Clara stood by the door, one hand over her chest. Her breathing was ragged, but steady. She hadn't collapsed. She hadn't opened the door. She hadn't apologized. She had stood her ground. When she was certain they were gone, she slid down to the floor, her back against the cold door. Tears came not from fear, but from the shock of surviving her own past. Each drop hit the wooden floor in rhythm with the rain outside. After a few minutes, she stood, grabbed a tissue, wiped her face. In the mirror across the room, a woman looked back at her eyes, red but clear, different. No longer small, no longer trapped. Her phone lit up on the table. A new message from Sophie, her co-worker at Green Pulse Technologies, who often invited her to lunch. Sophie. "Hey, you didn't come to work today. Everything okay?" Clara stared at the words for a moment, then smiled a real smile. For the first time, when someone asked, "Everything okay?" the answer felt true. "Clara, yeah, everything's finally okay." She set the phone down, turned off the lights, and walked to the window. Outside, the rain still fell, but softer now, like the city itself was breathing with her. In the dim Portland glow, the glass fogged over, reflecting the silhouette of a woman not flawless, not invincible, but finally aware of her own peace. She leaned her head against the frame, eyes closing. A quiet thought bloomed, warm and fierce. I'm not their good daughter anymore. I'm the survivor of my own story. Outside, the rain began to fade. And inside, in that small apartment washed in golden light, Clara Jennings sat, with her knees pulled close, smiling a small, steady smile that seemed to soften the darkness around her. The next morning, Portland washed itself clean in a light drizzle. A silvery mist veiled the sky, and the first weak rays of sunlight slipped through the apartment window. Clara sat at the dining table, sipping a bitter mouthful of coffee, watching rainwater trace slow paths down the glass, quiet, ordinary, until her phone vibrated. A familiar notification flashed across the screen. Facebook. Marion Jennings just posted a new update. Clara froze. A chill ran down her spine, not fear, exactly, but recognition. She already knew what was coming. Her hand trembled slightly as she tapped the notification. The post filled the screen. Her mother, standing in front of the Willow Street house, arms crossed, her expression stern the face of a judge delivering a sentence. Sometimes the child you raise turns out heartless. Some people think cutting ties makes them strong. But what kind of strength destroys their own family, leaves their parents homeless, and still calls it freedom? Below it, hundreds of comments poured in endless scrolling accusations. I'm honestly shocked. How could such a wonderful mother have a daughter like that? Kids these days forget where they come from. Someone should teach her what gratitude really means. Even distant relatives Clara hadn't spoken to in years joined in eager participants in a public witch hunt. Aunt Rachel. Clara's always been full of herself. I saw this coming a mile away, Mrs. Harris, the old neighbor. She never smiled or said hello to anyone. Now I understand why. Clara scrolled silently, reading every word without flinching. Inside her heartbeat stayed slow, steady, not pain, but the hollow calm of someone who had already predicted the storm. On social media, her mother had always been the image of devotion, posting flowers from her garden, homemade pies, and sentimental quotes about motherhood. Neighbors adored her. Friends called her Mom Marion. Everyone believed she was the perfect mother. And Clara? To them, she was the ungrateful child who broke her mother's heart. Another notification blinked. Vanessa tagged you in a comment. Clara tapped it. Vanessa, don't feel sorry for her, Mom. She's always thought she's better than us. Guess money can buy arrogance. The words were sharp and cold, a tiny blade pressed into her chest, and yet Clara only smiled faintly, sadly. Not the kind of smile that hides tears, but the kind that appears when you finally accept the truth about the people who once called themselves family. Her phone kept buzzing messages from coworkers, acquaintances, old friends. Sophie, coworker. Hey, I saw something online. You okay? Ben, college friend. Ignore the noise. Anyone who knows you knows it's not true. Old classmate. Want me to comment? People are being awful. She read them all, then set her phone down. No anger, no urge to defend herself. Because she'd learned something: when people want to believe a lie, the truth only makes them hate you more. Clara opened her laptop. The glow of the screen reflected off her tired eyes as she began to type, carefully, deliberately, to hr@solarlinktechnologies.com. Subject: regarding online rumors. Hi. If you happen to see any rumors about me online, please disregard them. Personal boundaries often upset those who used to benefit from silence. Thank you for your understanding. Clara Jennings. She read it once, then hit send. A few minutes later, a reply appeared in her inbox from Michael Collins, head of human resources. Clara, thank you for letting us know. Your professionalism and integrity speak louder than anything online. We value you. Don't let this get to you. She leaned back in her chair and exhaled. Then came the soft click of the laptop, closing, a small, final sound that somehow felt like the end of a lifetime ruled by guilt. Outside, Portland was still raining, but the light had brightened. Clara stepped onto the balcony, holding her second cup of coffee. Steam rose from the streets below, blending with the faint notes of Billie Holiday drifting from the apartment downstairs. She unlocked her phone again. Her mother's post was still spreading, the share count climbing. But this time, Clara didn't feel her chest tighten. Instead, she felt a deep, quiet sorrow for how easily a mother could choose social validation over love. Then, a small notification appeared at the corner of the screen. New comment from Mr. Patel. She blinked. The bank manager, the man who had helped her free herself from the debts. Mr. Patel. Sometimes, people who lose control over others call it betrayal. But it's not betrayal, it's liberation. A brief comment, quickly buried beneath hundreds of strangers. But for Clara, it landed like a hand resting gently on an old wound. No one had ever defended her publicly before. Just one sentence and she suddenly didn't feel entirely alone. The next day, the post was still there, but something had shifted. The tone of the comments was changing. Some people began to question, wait, if the house is being repossessed, wouldn't that be the bank's issue? You can't lose a house just because one person stopped paying, right? Didn't the daughter only co-sign, not own the place? Curiosity began to replace outrage. The tide was turning slowly, but unmistakably. Justice, in its quiet way, was finding balance again. By the third day, the post was gone. No announcement. No explanation. Just the gray words. Post unavailable. Clara sat in her favorite cafe on Hawthorne Boulevard, where she often went to read. Through the window, sunlight broke through the clouds at last. On the table beside her, the morning paper lay folded open to the real estate section, a small notice about a house on Willow Street, scheduled for foreclosure due to missed payments. She didn't need to read further. The truth was already there. When she left the cafe, she slipped her phone into her pocket. The wind was cool against her hair, crisp and alive. For the first time in months, she felt real peace, not the fragile kind that comes from denial, but the peace of someone who has survived the storm. On her walk home, she paused on the Willamette River Bridge, watching seagulls circle above the water. A thought crossed her mind. If anyone ever asked, she wouldn't tell her story as a tragedy. She'd tell it as a rebirth. And when her phone lit up one last time with the quiet message, "Post unavailable," Clara simply smiled, because finally, silence had returned, not the silence of fear, but the silence of victory. 1 week later, Portland was cold that morning, no rain, just a soft veil of mist that looked like someone's breath had lingered on the glass. Clara Jennings sat at the small dining table in her third-floor apartment. Pale light slipping through the curtains and spilling across a white envelope embossed with the Crescent Bank logo in the corner. Outside, sparrows chirped on the telephone wire. Inside, the only sound was her heartbeat, slow, then quicker. She had seen the letter yesterday, tucked neatly in her mailbox downstairs, but hadn't opened it. Maybe because she was afraid that somehow, even now, they might still find a way to pull her back. But this morning, sitting in the stillness of her kitchen with sunlight touching the back of her hand, Clara felt it the moment had come. She slid a letter opener under the flap, slow and careful, as if unlocking an ancient door. The folded paper inside was thick, heavy. Across the center, bold words gleamed clear and sharp. "You are fully and legally released from all liabilities." Below it, the raised red seal of Crescent Bank caught the sunlight a streak of scarlet across a field of white. Clara laid the letter flat on the table. Her hand trembled. 1 second, 2. Then she laughed, a small, trembling, crystalline sound. It felt as if someone had just loosened the invisible rope that had been wrapped around her chest for 5 long years. Tears spilled, not from sorrow, but from something purer, the strange, weightless joy of finally being free. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maya, her closest friend from Green Pulse Technologies. Maya? Lunch plans? Jordan suggesting pizza at Pine Street again. Jordan, don't worry. We promise not to order anchovies this time. Clara laughed, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Her thumb brushed the raised seal on the page soft, deliberate, as if to confirm that this freedom was real, not a dream. She opened her laptop. The familiar spreadsheet filled the screen, a mirror of years spent tightening every corner of her life. Monthly payments. Mortgage assist, $450. Vanessa's SUV, $620. Clara stared at the two lines for a long while. She remembered every sleepless night spent calculating cents, terrified of missing a due date, the skipped meals, the quiet shame when her mother said, "You don't understand how much we sacrificed for that house." Now, all of it had been reduced to 2 lines of text. She moved the cursor, selected them both, and pressed delete. The screen went blank, an empty silence made of numbers. Then she typed a new line, steady hands, a faint smile curling at her lips. My future fund $1,070 month, a new account, not for anyone else, not to help, not to keep the family stable, just for her. The phone rang, a video call from Maya. Her bright face filled the screen, hair tied up high, and behind her, Jordan was fussing over a pizza crust. Clara, we're thinking dinner instead. You in? Dinner sounds perfect, Clara said, voice light. I'll bring dessert. Only if it's not those healthy cookies again, Jordan teased. No promises, she laughed, but this time I'll add chocolate. A lot of it. Good girl, Maya grinned. It's Friday. We celebrate survival. They all laughed, the easy kind of laughter that comes when you're safe with people who never make you feel small. With them, Clara didn't need to prove anything. She didn't need to be perfect, grateful, or endlessly forgiving. After the call, she stood and reached for her coat. Passing the mirror, she paused. The woman staring back had slightly messy hair, eyes still red, but her expression was calm. No longer the daughter who lowered her head whenever someone mentioned family. No longer the woman who carried shame for abandoning her parents. She touched the glass and whispered with a soft smile, "You did it!" Outside, the Portland air carried the smell of fresh coffee and lavender from the shop at the corner. The wind brushed her hair, cool, clean. A bus passed, its window reflecting her silhouette. Clara Jennings, 32 free. She stopped at Marion's Corner Bakery, picked out 2 slices of chocolate mousse cake and a few bright orange slices. The cashier, recognizing her, smiled. You look happy today. Something good happen? Clara smiled back, handing her the money. I just got a letter of release. Oh, wish I'd get one of those, the woman laughed. From a lover, I hope? Clara shook her head. No, from life itself. That evening, they gathered at the little pizza place on Pine Street, golden lights spilling across wooden tables. Maya told a story about a new coworker who had spilled coffee all over his presentation notes, and Jordan quipped, "Well, at least he knows how to make an impression." They laughed until their sides hurt. When the pizza arrived, Clara lifted her glass of wine. Her voice was soft but sure. To fresh starts. To freedom, Jordan replied, clinking glasses. And to never paying for people who laugh when our cakes hit the floor, Maya added, laughing so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Clara joined in. Her laughter rose and mingled with theirs, brushing lightly against old memories, the party on Willow Street, the cake smashed on the floor, the cruel laughter of those she once called family. But now, that memory no longer haunted her. It was just a story, one chapter that had closed. When they stepped out of the restaurant, the rain had started again, soft, steady. Clara stood for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the damp air fill her lungs. Streetlights shimmered on the puddles like 1,000 tiny stars. She took out her phone, snapped a photo of the bank letter, the red seal glowing against the white page. She saved it, not to boast, but as a reminder. Freedom doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes the moment you stop asking for permission to live. That night, back home, she placed the envelope in a small wooden box, the one that held the most important papers of her life: her diploma, her first job offer, and now, her letter of release. She turned off the lights, drew the curtains, and sat by the window. The rain still whispered outside. On the table, the paper reading, "My future fund, $1, 070 month," lay open. She looked at it and nodded softly. A new beginning, a new life. And in the quiet Portland night, Clara Jennings smiled the smile of someone who had finally paid the debt not with money, but with the courage to choose herself. 1 year had passed since the red-sealed letter from Crescent Bank had drawn the final line beneath all the years of suffocating burden. Portland was still Portland. The rain still came without warning, the coffee still rich, the sunset still painted purple with memory. But for Clara Jennings, the city was no longer a place to run from. It had become the place to begin again. Inside the 16th floor office of SolarLink Technologies, Clara sat surrounded by project boards covered in yellow sticky notes. Her coffee had gone cold, but her smile was warm. Her hair was neatly tied back, her voice calm and steady as she guided the team of young engineers gathered around. "Remember, deadlines aren't just dates, they're promises," she said, clear and composed. Jordan, now her teammate, grinned. "Boss, that sounds deep. I'm posting that on Slack tomorrow under number Motivation Monday." Maya laughed. "Don't forget the hashtag number Jennings Wisdom." Clara chuckled, shaking her head. The room filled with laughter, easy, genuine, familiar. Between the soft rhythm of keyboard clicks and the hum of the city beyond the windows, she realized this was her real family. A place where she didn't owe anyone her silence, her guilt, or her obedience just to belong. The workday moved on quietly. By evening, after everyone else had gone, Clara stayed behind, organizing files and clearing the table. Her hand paused on a small note, pinned beside her monitor, written in black ink. "Peace is not a gift, it's a practice," she smiled. Then the silence broke the faint buzz of her phone. The screen lit up with a name not saved in her contacts, yet instantly familiar. Vanessa. A message. Just 8 words. "I'm sorry for everything." Clara stood still. No music swelled, no rush of emotion, just a thin moment of quiet, like a breeze brushing through leaves. She stared at the words for a long time, then gently set the phone down and poured herself a cup of tea. Through the rising steam, old images flickered. The mocking laughter, the cake on the ground, her mother's cold stare, and that rain-soaked night when they'd stood outside her door screaming. But now, it all felt distant, faded like a film she'd watched too many times, until no feeling remained to rewind. Jordan appeared at the doorway. "Clara, you're still here?" "Just waiting for a bit of light," she said softly. He noticed her phone, still glowing with the unread message. "Vanessa?" Clara nodded. "You gonna reply?" She was quiet for a moment, then took a slow sip of tea. "No. I think forgiveness doesn't always mean reopening the door. Sometimes it just means locking it a little more gently and walking away in peace." Jordan nodded, understanding. "Sounds like another number Jennings Wisdom quote to me." Clara smiled, light and genuine. "Yeah, but this one, I don't plan to share." He waved goodbye and left. Clara stayed, alone again, looking out at the city. The sunset was fading into violet, spilling across the glass towers and scattering into 1,000 reflections. She picked up her phone, let her finger hover over the last message and pressed delete. Not out of anger, not to erase, but because the story was finished. Forgiveness didn't need witnesses. Outside, the first drops of rain tapped softly against the windows. Clara slipped on her coat and stepped out into the night. The wind brushed through her hair cold, but she felt warm. On Hawthorne Boulevard, the neon glow of a cafe cast gold light across the wet pavement. A group of college students ran by laughing, splashing puddles. Clara sidestepped and laughed too, a small, unguarded laugh, real and effortless. She ducked into Elm and Birch Cafe, ordered her usual, a cappuccino with cinnamon and a slice of orange. The barista recognized her and smiled. "Long day?" "Long year," Clara said with a gentle smile, "but a good one." When the steaming cup arrived, she sat by the window where the streetlight spilled a soft glow across the table. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and wrote in neat, even strokes, "Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me, so I can sleep without ghosts at the door." She closed the notebook, took a sip of coffee. The scent of cinnamon filled the air, warm, sweet, like the first morning of a new year. Outside, Portland's purple dusk was fading, leaving behind a soft orange streak along the horizon. In the reflection on the glass, a woman sat alone, not lonely, just calm. The streetlight traced her face. Clara Jennings, her gaze steady, kind, and sure the look of someone who had finally stepped out of her own past. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Maya. "Pizza night again? Jordan says he'll bring the wine." Clara smiled and typed back quickly. "Count me in. I'll bring dessert. Still chocolate." She stood, slipped on her coat, and left the cafe. The rain had stopped. Puddles mirrored car lights and neon signs, smudging the world into soft colors. Inside her chest, she felt light, as if she'd finally set every burden down, not with a slammed door, but a quiet close. To forgive, but not return. To love, but never self-wound. Because sometimes, real peace isn't found in fixing the past. It's in daring to move forward without looking back. The city lights brightened. Amid the crowd, Clara Jennings walked slowly, calm and certain, her eyes lit with a new kind of faith. Not faith in others, but in herself. A year later, she had learned the most important truth of all. Forgiveness isn't opening the door again. Forgiveness is locking it softly and walking away in peace.